This ability comes from becoming comfortable with the state of not knowing, which ultimately is the state of not thinking. Because when you're not thinking, you don't know anything. And yet when you're not thinking, a different dimension of consciousness arises, has no conceptual knowledge in it, but there is a vast intelligence there that is non-conceptual. In order to have a balanced life, we need to be able to dwell in both of these dimensions. The dimension of conceptual knowledge, we can't do without it, and the conception of the deeper knowing that is non-conceptual, so it's not ignorance. I often recommend that you should try this out in everyday life and see, how do you know something? How do you experience something new? You can go into nature, you can go into a forest. You can experience the forest through your conceptual knowledge, depending on how much you know about trees and plants and birds and vegetation and so on. You enter a forest, you've never been there, and you immediately can say, well, this is that, and that's a such and such a tree, the approximate age, how it grows, the nature of the soil. You know a lot. Or you could go and ask somebody to explain the forest to you. That's you have a guide. So the guide takes you into the forest and explains, and you learn a lot about the trees. And after an hour, you come out again, and you have absorbed an enormous amount of knowledge about the forest. That is one way of knowing the forest, conceptually, and there's nothing wrong with it. But there's another way. Go into the forest and you don't have a guide and you don't know much about trees or anything. You go into the forest and simply experience the forest directly without the intermediary of conceptualization, which means you look at the trees, you look at the plants, you take in all the sense perceptions of the forest, the totality of sense perceptions. Not only do you look at individual life forms, you're also aware of the totality of the forest, that is an energy field that surrounds you, and all these things, you take that in with little or no conceptual thinking. So you're beginning to know this forest in a totally different way that is non-conceptual, and that moves you. It's also, you experience the forest, no longer do you experience a clear separation between you and that amazing life form, which is the forest. Around you, there is the sense of merging with, there's a sense of oneness with it, which cannot be there when you approach it through conceptual knowledge. The concept is sticking labels on things and then mistaking the label for what it is. It's that. Oh, now I know what it is. This is the name of the tree. Now I know what it is. No, you don't. You've just put a label on that mysterious and miraculous and profound thing. and then you believe every label, that's what it is. It's not. You don't know what it is. You just have a name for it. But we need that kind of knowledge too. But the thing is, if all you have or most of your life is conducted through conceptual knowledge, and this is what is encouraged in our civilization, when that is all you know, then a vital dimension is missing from your life. A very vital dimension. In fact, one could almost say you inhabit very much a surface reality. So there's no depth to anything. There's just conceptualization. So you inhabit ultimately a universe that is deadened, or you are dead to it, because you can no longer experience in its depths. And also, of course, when you are confined to conceptual knowledge only in regard to nature, you cannot possibly sense the sacredness of nature. In fact, from a point of view of conceptualization, sacredness is a meaningless term. When you say the sacredness of the forest, they say, can you please define what exactly do you mean? It means you want more concepts. So you can't understand what it points to. You don't know it until you get a glimpse of it. And then you say, no explanation will suffice for you to know what sacredness is, in the same way that you can talk about honey for a long time. You can write a PhD about honey. You've never tasted it. So you know enormous amount about honey, but you have never tasted honey. So do you know honey? No. You know about honey, but you don't know honey. It's because there are two different modalities of knowing the world. So we need to be in both without being, especially we need to be careful not to be absorbed continuously by conceptual knowledge, which is not only about things, even about other human beings. How do you know a person? What do you know about a person? How do you... in some languages, this is interesting, there's sometimes wisdom embodied in language. In Spanish or French, you have actually two words for to know. There are different ways of knowing. One is a more abstract knowing, which in Spanish would be saber, yo sé, I know. This is a fact. I know who he is, yo quién es, I know who he is. But if you know him, you use a different verb, conozco, le conozco. I know you. I know who you are, uses one verb. I know you uses a different verb. So there's in French the same, savoir and connaître. So this is very interesting. So there's sometimes certain amount of wisdom embodied in language. Our task is to, again, be able to move in both and have access to both modalities of knowing. Without, our danger is losing ourselves in the conceptual mind, so that ultimately we inhabit a universe that is basically lifeless and dead, because these are lifeless concepts. So this means we need to develop the ability to periodically let go of the conceptual mind without losing consciousness. So you're not going to sleep. You're not falling off the chair because you've had 6 whiskeys. I don't know how many you need to fall off the chair, but you let go of the conceptual mind and just be present with what is. And then you can know anything. You can know whatever it is through sense perception. Become very much more aware of sense perception. Things suddenly become more vitally or vibrantly alive when you look at something without interference of the conceptual mind. And at the same time, you're not only acutely aware of sense perception so that things are more alive suddenly around you, but you're also aware of the underlying presence of consciousness itself, which is you. You're aware of yourself, not the person, but you're aware of yourself as the presence. And so you are the space for whatever arises there. And so that's a totally different way of knowing